Welcome to the Bucketlist Project podcast, a weekly show that talks about stories from a pursuit of nomadic lifestyle around the world, interviews with interesting people who I've met in this journey, and a generous dose of thought-provoking conversations around travel as a lifestyle choice. If you love to listen on topics revolving around travel, then this will be a perfect companion for the ride to office, your morning jog, or in general when you're winding down for the day. We will have new episodes releasing every Friday, so do share and subscribe to our podcast and get your weekly share of travel inspiration. In the Indian context, the break year or gap year is mostly associated with preparing for competitive exams, be it IIT, NET or NEET after 12th standard or CAT, UPSC after graduation. But it is never associated with travel as far as I know. Some of it is also stemming from the fact that completing education is a guaranteed stepping stone to affluence and uplifting your family's quality of living. So a lot of people focus to take break year for studying, and it is perfectly fine. And especially if your socioeconomic background compels you to do so. We have had our parents' generation that has seen the struggle, and for most of us millennials as well, the struggle has been real. So the break year is always associated at best with studying and not indulging in anything else. But does Gen Z have a similar socioeconomic barriers? I increasingly see that the Gen Z is continuing to have a comfortable cushion of not having to support family at home economically to start with. They have more opportunities at workforce where skills are valued more than the educational background, and they also have many more opportunities in terms of the fields of studies or fields where they can get jobs, right? So with this context, you would like to believe that break year and travel would become a very big proponent in India, like how it is in the Western world. But I'm pretty surprised that the concept of break year and travel has not picked up among this generation. And at least this is my reading. I'm a very strong proponent for break year in a young adult's life because I believe it is a period of picking up real life skills and independent decision making. There are many vocal advocates for this concept, including educational institutes like Harvard, which allow for gap year in their admissions and not demonize it. Even when we take hyperactive startup ecosystems, which talk about, giving in all in and spending a lot of time, Steve Jobs and Elon Musk, the poster boys, have had break years in their very formative years. They have mentioned enough number of times in mainstream media how this break has transformative changes to their thoughts as young adults. And if you take countries where you have to serve military compulsorily post turning 18, gap year is almost a ritual between military service and university. I have seen a lot of people in the last 12 months who have treaded this path globally. One thing I can say with a lot of confidence is that they seem to be very, very clear, mature, and confident individuals, and they know what they want to do in terms of their lives. Professional success obviously is a subjective matter, but I can see that these adults know how to build a fulfilling life for themselves in whatever profession they pick up. But all of these that I've seen are mostly Westerners. Why is this not an acceptable behavior in India? I sometimes think traditionally held belief around milestones in India is one of the main reasons for this. And I think it definitely requires a rethink. By 18 finish high school, by 22 finish graduation, by 25, 26 post graduation, by 28 get married, and by 30 have kids. By all means, these are very important milestones, and I completely subscribe to them. But if they get deferred by 1 year or two, it does not make huge difference in larger scheme of things. I can say this with assurance, having seen how India has transformed in the last 10 years, that these 1 or 2 years is not going to make a big difference in your life, and the opportunities which you feel you will lose out because of break year will always come knocking at your door. To make this perspective more relevant, I have a special guest on this podcast who took a very bold step of taking a break here and travel right after his graduation, or probably like 10 months after his graduation. His break year came with a mission to learn life skills which he felt he could not have got from a paycheck life. And he calls himself, initially he called himself the lone wanderer, but now he calls himself the misfit Magellan. um, and his first mission, as per after right after his break year, was to set out on a 180-day road trip around India. And there was a purpose to his travel, and it gave him immense exposure to a lot of real life skills. The success of first mission made him think bolder and bigger. He went on longer bike trips, but now around Southeast Asia, then Europe, and finally North and South America. What started as 180 days became almost 5-year journey for him. Slowly, his story became an inspiration for a lot of corporate brands and media as well who wanted to associate with him. Eventually, he returned back from his break year and now enjoys a successful career back in India. He continues to tell stories through his new profession, but now for corporate brands or for bigger art houses. I'm keen to unravel his life story and perspectives on break year for our audience. Be rest assured, all of this will come with a lot of interesting anecdotes and stories all through the podcast. So please stay tuned. Hi, I'm Srinath Shankar, your host, a Party Scuba instructor, co-founder of Pick Your Trail, India's fastest growing leisure travel brand, a digital nomad, and a soul travel proponent. Today's topic of podcast is normalizing break year for the Gen Z. I'm going to be joined by Rohith Subramaniam, who also calls himself the misfit Magellan. His perspectives on break year are very unconventional, yet very relevant for the young adults today, is what I assume. We will try unraveling his mind, get a sneak peek into what his thought process was when he embarked on this journey. Hi Rohith, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, hi Srinath. Good to meet you. Good to do this. Super
Yeah,
excited.
I think, I've known you for almost 6 years now, 2017.
2007.
It's a great pleasure to host, it's a great pleasure to host you on the show and bring your story to our audience. First, before all of this, let's establish the credentials. Do you still qualify as Gen Z?
No, I am 1994 born.
You're not.
I don't relate to Gen Z at all.
Okay.
Yeah, one generation
Okay,
before.
borderline.
Borderline. I mean, but
Yeah,
I'm the boomer who
borderline
can give advice
because
to them now.
yeah, because anything that is tagged as advice, the people call them boomer. But I hope this is going to be not anything like that. It's going to be much more interesting. I can guarantee that.
Yeah, and let's not
So
put this as advice. Let's put this as perspective or life lessons that we kind of went through in our early 20s, right? Or whatever. So we can keep it that way.
You're still young, okay? Don't make it sound like very old people talking this in this podcast and giving life advice.
True.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know that you're a huge movie buff. So if you can, kind of introduce the entire concept of you going into a break year and how did all of this happen as a crisp trailer? How can you go about doing it? I'm expecting a lot of drama, action, and maybe romance also.
There's very little romance, I think, in the thing. The romance has always been with the motorcycle and the road, I feel. But a crisp trailer, okay, I mean, it won't be a crisp trailer, but a very interesting trailer, I would say. I mean, the whole story, imagine this, the whole story starts with in 1994 when I was born, when my dad basically was in Hubli. I was born in Chennai. My dad took a motorcycle because there was no other means to reach me at that time, and he rode all the way to Chennai to see me for the first time, right? So the love for motorcycling and traveling started the day I was born. So my dad takes all the credits for this, right?
Nice.
And the moment I kind of turned 18, I moved to Bangalore for my college, and I was in Bangalore, and the first year I had a semester break. That's when I did the first travel, and that's the first time I ever rode an Enfield. I fell in love with it in the Himalayas, and the journey never stopped after that. Yeah, I just could keep riding around the world. And there was a lot of open roads, there were a lot of gravels, there was a lot of interesting human stories that I encountered along the way. Met a lot of people, ate a lot of food, got a lot of perspective, and yeah, I think that would be the entire narration of the trailer of what the journey has been overall.
Great. So, kind of let's get real now. The concept of break year is still a luxury in India, considering the socio-economic background and the mindset of a lot of people. Um,
Correct.
and you were fortunate enough to do it, probably 1 year out of college. And do you consider yourself privileged? How do you normalize this break here for today's youth? And can you make it relatable with your own story of how this break here actually happened and what was it all about?
Sure. I think definitely privileged, right? I mean, I'm still, I had a decent living. I'm not a very upper class background, but like a middle class Chennai boy who grew up in Chennai and all of that. But I think travel has always been something that's second nature to me, right? Parents always let me travel alone because they're also independent travelers. Even today, if I have to ask dad to say, you have a meeting in Delhi, he says, can I drive all the way from Chennai to Delhi? He won't think about the flight or the train, right? So that's how the upbringing played a huge role, I feel. But for me, what happened was I was in college, I finished college, but by the end of college, I was running my own startup. Third year of college, I was running my own startup. It's called Fund My Dream. It was called Fund My Dream, which is a crowdfunding platform for creative people to basically raise money for their projects, right? And one fine day, I was sitting at Starbucks. I was kind of thinking, what am I doing? Right. I mean, I'm 22 at that time, 21, 22 at that time. And it's like, I think we should just get out from this monotony and start doing something. And it sounds silly, it sounds funny, but it was that impromptu in the sense that I literally went the next day, gave up my company to my co-founder, and I said, I'm just going on a road trip. And at that time, my bank balance was close to 5,000 rupees, and that's all it was, right? Uh, but eventually I figured the way. This was 2016, January 2016 is when I started. So I basically quit around October or whatever. So from then, October 2015 to January 2016, I kept basically figuring out how to make this trip happen. And the trip was pretty much to do India for 8 months, right? So that is my personal anecdote in terms of how I did the travel. But in the larger sense for people, I think it's very important here because for me, the first time I ever thought about a break year was right after school, right? Where I just wanted to take a year off and just travel around India on a motorcycle again. But mom at that time had a lot of ideas. She said, if you're doing this, I think you should do it a little bigger, right? You should not just do India. You should just uh, go a little more in terms of going around the world, seeing more things and everything. So we kind of said, okay, let's finish college and then get to this. So I think parents played a huge role in that. But is it possible for today's generation? 100%, yeah. Right? Like it's something that I really encourage people to do because the world view that you have being in one city, kind of grown up with a bunch of people, it's all very small fraction, I say. And the moment you kind of experience and explore yourself to the rest of the world and kind of see more people from around the world, it helps you to gain perspectives from different lenses, right?
Okay.
And
I'm
that
just going to
that
pause
helps.
here. Can you help us
Uh,
double click a bit on the decision itself of taking a break here? How did the decision happen? What was your purpose of that decision? So that people can relate to it when they're actually about to take that decision.
Sure. I think for me, when I had to take the decision, it was very simple. Yeah. I wanted to basically take a break from the monotony of life that I was living in. So my life was this, right? I used to wake up, I used to get ready, go to work, I used to come back home, I used to watch a movie and go to bed, right? You can pick any random date in a year, and I would be doing the same thing. There was no difference at all, right? So for me, that was the trigger. I said, if at some point, if I'm going to ask myself this question, that on February 15th in 2017, what were you doing, right? I wanted the answer to be very different. than what I did on February 15th, 2018 or 19, right? So that's how the decision came about. It was not, it was very selfish. It was very selfish to the sense of saying, hey, I want to basically learn and unlearn a lot of things that I've kind of gone through in my life. So let me kind of break out of this monotony and see what the world has to offer. And that's how simple it was.
Okay. And what was your purpose? Did you have any purpose, or you like, chuck it, I just want to go ahead and do it and figure out later on?
No, I never had a purpose. There was no purpose. It was that aimless wandering around the world to just see what it has to offer, right? It was never about, there was no end goal to it. There was no destination to go to, and there was no purpose whatsoever. It is basically saying, okay, cool, let me take a motorcycle and see where it goes. And it kept going on for 5 years from there. Yeah.
Okay. Because I'm asking these questions because I'm a very strong proponent of break here. And for it to have some purpose, if not on day one, over a period of time. Because taking a year, break year, lazing around and running away from responsibility is a criminal waste of time. You need to have some goal or some purpose. As you said, when you started, you just wanted to take a break from your monotony and wanted to have a unique experience. Probably that itself was a purpose. But can you also help unravel over a period of next 5 years? How did it evolve? And how did you plan about making this a 5 year journey? Because that's a huge time period, of taking a break. Because people generally would take a break for 1 year or probably 2 years. This is like 5 year. So it needs to have some purpose, right? Otherwise, it is very unsustainable.
Very true. I think on day one there was no purpose because I also wanted the journey to let the purpose reveal to me rather than me going with a set goal, right? The reason why I say this is also this. The moment you kind of go with an end objective or a purpose, saying I want to become a better person in this travel, right? You're kind of shutting your other experiences that's going to come to you. So the thing is, it's going to be a horse with the two side walls that's going to have, right? So it's just going to be very focused when you're doing that. Rather, I did the ulta, where I basically said, let me kind of go put myself out there, let the universe kind of tell me what the purpose is of the journey is, right? And on day one, I don't think purpose is very necessary. The purpose might just be saying that let me just let myself be open enough to let new experiences come to me, and that's the start. The moment you kind of start that, the journey kind of defines the purpose more and more. So for me, the purpose eventually became over the course of 5 years was unlearning, right, and getting to know myself better. I basically did 46 countries and I'd have written close to 300,000 kilometers plus or minus, right? I never kept a count, but that would be the number, right? But every passing kilometer, every passing destination, the journey was never about seeing more landscape, seeing more things, but it's about getting to know myself better. So it was a inward journey than an outward journey to begin with, right? And the people that I've met have kind of shaped me the person that I am today. In the sense, I have taken something of all these people, the goodness of all these people that I've met over these 5 years has kind of helped me to be the person that I am today. You can see a reflection of all these people in me, right? And to answer your question of how did I end up at 5 years, it was never a plan, right? On day one, it was basically saying we'll go one more day from here. The 8 months plan also was never a 8 months plan. I just said I want to ride. There was no destination. There was no end limit to any of this. So I said, let's take it one day at a time, right? So the 5 years was always broken down to one day at a time. It was never like saying, okay, at the end of this, I'll start this. When I finished the India ride and came back, I realized that I have more money in my bank account than what I started with because of the brands and stuff. And I said, let me basically just do one more trip. And then one more trip became one more trip to one more trip, which ended up in 5 years. And also the whole trip paused because not because I wanted to pause. Pandemic happened. I had to come back for my best friend's wedding in India. I was supposed to go back to Alaska in 2020, and basically pandemic happened, so I stayed back. Otherwise, April 4th was my ticket booked to Alaska.
Okay. Interestingly, there are two things that you mentioned. Number one, you mentioned that you had a small dream and your mom made you think bigger. That itself is a very very unusual thing to happen. Parents actually encouraging you to take that break here. So, what was running in your mom's mind, to be very honest?
Oh my God, I really say that they performed a social experiment on me while I was growing up. Okay, and I don't see it any other way. So I'll give you some sort of backstory of their thinking or thought process, right? So when I was in school, there were three rules that they followed. Okay, in terms of education and exams and stuff. Rule number one was whenever I basically fail an exam, I get taken out to the best restaurant in town, and I get to eat. I get to choose the restaurant, and I get to eat whatever I want to eat, because she says failure is inevitable. So let's celebrate it, and let's kind of be happy about it and not sulk about it, right? Number two is whenever I get zero in an exam, I get whatever I want in life. So I basically can ask for an Xbox and I get it because I got a zero in exam. Because my mom's philosophy was a person who knows nothing is the most absolute state to be at. And she was happy her son was that. And she also knows that I can't sit in an exam hall for 2.5 hours quietly. I'll rewrite the question paper three times. I'll get half a mark for that. So getting zero is more difficult than getting 100. And I was always conditioned to get zero than getting 100. Right. The third rule was whenever I failed an exam, whenever I finished the exam, whatever mark I got, dad had this rule that if I get anything more than 40% in a exam, I was never allowed inside the house. Because the simple questioning was this: 40 is the passing mark. Why are you writing more? Who are you trying to impress? Right. So there have been a lot of panchayat in front of my house when I've gotten 80% in an exam, and my dad used to be like, "You cannot enter this house. Your job is to get 40." Because they kind of saw school as a different medium, right? They thought school was not just about academics, not just about getting marks in exams. They thought school is a place where you make friends. School is a place where you play, culturals, all of this. You experience life a little different. So with this backstory, I really think it was a no-brainer for them when I told that I want to travel.
I don't know if this backstory will be inspiring for a lot of parents or traumatizing for them. Imagine, kids gaming
I,
and getting everything that they want by scoring a zero. Today's kids are very smart, by
yeah.
the way. So, but interesting, interesting. Yeah,
I
please go
know.
ahead.
No, it is very different upbringing in that way, right? I mean, it worked for me. I'm not saying it's a one size fit all that might work for everybody. So for me, their thought process was this: when I said I want to travel, even when I told I want to travel across India, when I said at 21, right? Mom's one question was, if you're thinking, think big. Why are you thinking small, right? And she was a voracious reader, so she used to read a lot of books, right? And she used to tell me stories as a kid, saying that in Austria there used to be this open chess field in the park where people used to come play chess, and I really wish you should go and experience that one day, and all of that. So it is all seeded at some degree thanks to her reading and her thought process to begin with. But as I say, they did a social experiment and it worked. But I personally feel she never could travel, right? When she was growing up, she had a lot of responsibilities and everything. So she said that's the best way that you can shape yourself up. So just go for it.
Hmm. Okay, interesting. The second thing that I wanted to talk about is that you spoke about 5 years, you spoke about you starting with 5,000, but also you mentioned that at the end of 1 year you had more money in your bank account. So, where did the equation of money come into the picture, and how did you make this self sustaining travel possible for yourself?
Sure. So, I mean, on day one, I had zero plan. I mean, I had no clue, right? Again, there was no purpose to begin with. So, travel was just to say, let me figure this out. But what happened was, a friend of mine was working at Tripoto at that time. She said, I'll write an article about you of your journey, right? So, I told, okay, cool, I'm going to ride around India for 8 months, write an article. At that time, she said, no, 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 8 months in India and all is not going to work out. Tell me some random number of countries that you think I should put, right? And I was watching MotoGP, so I said 46 because Valentino Rossi, right? So the article was Indian 21-year-old Indian guy is riding to 46 countries. It's not like she didn't write it as was planning to ride to 46 countries, but she said is riding across 46 countries, right? So that got enough traction at that time in 2016. It got a million view on the article by itself, and my Instagram got a sizable amount of followers here. So which is basically at that time around 20,000 or 25,000, and few friends of mine who were working in different brands just called me and said, hey, do you want to like endorse us or like, take our products and go, and we'll pay you money for that. And I didn't know this existed, right? So Wrangler was the first brand, and they said they had a new denim, and they said we'll just give you this denim, ride it for, I mean, use it for the entire ride. Once you come back, we just want to use it for test case, and we'll pay you. I'm like, great. Then I mean, I still have a beard. I had a beard at that time as well. So I called Ustra and I told Ustra that, boss, I have a beard and I'm traveling across India for 8 months. Do you want to fund my beard? And they said that's the most bizarre call that we ever got, but sure, why not? And that happened, right? And then bunch of other brands came. So money got sorted out without even me realizing it got sorted out. And I didn't know how much I had. But the time I came back from the trip and saw I had a lot of more money, and I realized that, okay, cool, I can create content for brand, and I can create moments for these brands, and that would eventually help me to travel more. And this was influencing day one, right? 2016 is not a big deal at that time. So your CPV, your CPC, and all never mattered. It was about saying, get there, go do what you want to do. Your cost per view, cost per click was not an equation at all. They said, create content. So that's how I ended up with more money, and that's how I kept ending up with more money in every trip that I went to.
Interesting. Also, when you started all of this, while your parents are so cool, you've had a very good experimental upbringing. I'm sure you would have had fears in your mind because you're traversing an unconventional path. What were these fears? Did you have any backup plans or a safety net if things did not work out? How did this all this? Can you throw some light?
Actually, it's very interesting, right? That's why I also kind of encourage people to start doing this at a very young age, because the world view and kind of the risk taking ability is more, right? I never had a fear at that time because I didn't know what I should be fearing about, right? Because now I'm 29, and at this time if you ask me the same question, the answer might be very different. But at 21, I didn't know what I'm losing out on. I've not tasted a corporate money. I've not tasted like great success in life. So the failure and success line was very thin to begin with. One. Number two is I had so much room to basically say, let me just go and experiment and see. There is nothing to lose at that age, right? So the fear factor was very little. I didn't know what a backup plan should be, because I thought leaving a startup and starting this is the backup plan, right? So that is number one. Number two is at that age, I was not even sure what and where. Like, I mean, I still have this joke with my mom saying that my school teacher, Vandana ma'am, who was also my principal, but she was my geography teacher. She always comes and complains saying that Rohith is the worst geography student ever, right? If you, at that time in school, if you ask me, where is Delhi, I'd be pointing out somewhere around like Meghalaya or Mizoram or somewhere, because I was so bad at it, right? So I just took it upon me saying that, listen, let me just go and plot the map by myself, right? And that was it. There was no like major fear, because I didn't know what to expect out of the trip to begin with, and I don't know what I'm going to lose out of it, because with 5,000 rupees in your bank account, you already don't have anything, right? So you are the person who don't have much in your life to begin with. So now you're just going and seeing, and if it fails, cool. Like in the movie Sudhakavam, they say, the last point that Vijay Sethupathi kind of articulates to people. He says, if it doesn't work out, it's okay. Shamelessly come back and start doing what you're doing. And literally that's what happened. And I mean, thankfully for me, it just worked out and worked out and worked out, and I kept continuing doing that.
But what were your backup plans if it did not work out? Was there any safety net?
No, nothing. Because parents on day one, when I told them this, I'm going to do this, they're like, one thing is very clear. We are not going to fund your travel. Because till school, college, we took care of you. That's all. After 21, you're on your own, right? There's no like financial support that you can expect from us, which was great because I became independent at that time. Even when I was running my startup, I kind of started spending on my own, and I started building my own sort of lifestyle, right? So I never had a safety net, number one. Number two is there was no backup plan also, because I didn't know what will I do if I come back, because I was not thinking that far ahead. I said I'm going to go on a ride, and I took one day at a time. So for me, the safety net never existed to begin with, or the backup plan never existed.
Hmm. And at that age, your peer group, they're working, they're getting their paychecks, they're partying, they're socializing, and you're on a road trip all alone. Did you ever feel left out?
No, yeah, because whenever these guys used to call and they used to say that, bro, I'm envious of your life and I really wish I had the courage to do what you're doing. Uh, kind of compensated for that, I think. But I also think there was a big void in people, right? I mean, they were doing this, but they always aspired to do something else, right? So for me, I never had a stigma saying that, oh, I'm missing out on all the funds, I'm missing out on my formative years, because I think at somewhere I read about Anthony Bourdain saying your 20s has to be spent traveling, right? And Anthony Bourdain is a big inspiration over the years for travel and everything. So for me, it just stuck with me. I said, let me, and it was not like I was not partying, I was not socializing and chilling. The motorcycle ride was solo. The moment I reached a destination, I had at least a whole village sitting next to me and hearing my stories and talking about it and everything. And I think it traces back to one more story when I was a kid, right? This mom had recreated at some time. So I stay in 8th Street and my grandmom's house is in 7th Street. And I used to take this tricycle when I was 2.5, 3 years old and ride the tricycle from my house to their house all by myself. My mom never used to be around me, right? So when I used to go, apparently a lot of people used to wave at me and smile at me and be happy for me riding the tricycle by myself, right? And at some point, it kind of hit me that others' happiness is can be seen when you do what you do the best, right? If I'm happy doing what I'm doing without any enchantment or any sort of restriction, everyone is going to be just waving at you and be happy for that as well, right? And I think that kind of rubbed off when I started traveling. I never could put myself in front of any of my friends who were working, who are earning a handsome salary, because my journey was different in my head. I wanted to figure out what I want to be, who I am, and all of that. So that's how that went about.
Hmm. Okay, interesting. Can you double click on what you spoke about Anthony Bourdain and you should spend your 20s traveling? That thought, can you double click on that a bit? Because that seems to
For
have
sure. I
influenced you
think
a lot.
Oh, definitely. I think a lot of these people, right? Anthony Bourdain is one. Motorcycle Diaries was another very big inspiration. For my 12th or 13th birthday, my dad gave me the book, and I read that, and I always wanted to go to South America, which we'll touch upon eventually. But Bourdain played a huge role, yeah, because I used to see Parts Unknown when I was right after college or a little later, right? And I'd be like, who is this guy just going around eating food and living a very chill life? And his philosophies about travel has kind of shape me in terms of what I would also want to see the world in, right? Because all these guys, I mean, let it be Bukowski, let it be Anthony Bourdain, all these people, they never said travel as a mean of escape, right? They said that's the reality. You go through that, and that's how you see the world, right? And that's a way of living. So I kind of didn't see travel. I never treated travel as an escape. Maybe on day one, I'd have said, "Let me just explore this as a thing." But the moment I hit the road, it was always the reality or my way of living. Number one. Number two is when you basically see someone like Bourdain who kind of tells you that travel, you don't plan for your travel, but be little prepared in whatever things, right? That kind of helped me a lot because I never planned a trip. Even today, if you ask me what my next trip is and how am I planning, the planning is very little there. But the mental conditioning is very important because if I'm going to run, like how I'm going to go through a country or a particular stretch in my head, I would either be disappointed or overwhelmed with that thing. But with going with zero expectations and finding that balance there, kind of helps me to live the moment and just take it for what it is, right? So I think that way people like Bourdain shaped me a lot, and I think his death kind of took a long time for me to recover. I don't even know whether I still recovered out of it, but uh, the perspectives from them has kind of enriched and shaped me also in whatever way I am.
Hmm. Great. Any books that you recommend for the Gen Z on this?
Oh, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle. Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Read it, keep it close to you. That will give you a different perspective. I think that will kind of take you a long way once you finish reading that. So that will be my first recommendation and my only recommendation to start with.
Okay. Now that we have established that you're going to give boomer advice, can you, for the
Sure.
current generation, somebody taking a break here right now, what would be your cheat sheet of do's and don'ts for them to survive, monetize, and come out as a better individual with lifelong lessons? You can tell the duration, whatever you think is a cheat sheet. I would love for our listeners to kind of hear that.
Sure. I think number one is, again, as I said, be prepared for situations, in the sense, if you can be mentally prepared and kind of condition yourself to saying whatever adverse or whatever great thing is going to happen, I'm going to soak it all in, but never go extensive on planning something. Right, the plan will happen. The road will lead you to the next destination. The road will kind of make you meet people, make you take the journey forward. You don't have to do that, and leave the trust on the universe. It never disappoints. If you plan, then that might, I mean, at least for me, that's what it is. It would have restricted to a limit, but because I left everything for the universe to take care of, I think the journey went a little far ahead for me. Right. In terms of advice, I really think just do it. Don't question. Don't think. I know at 21, when you're going to look around, a lot of people have been speaking to you about the career and you missing out one very critical year of your life, or even when you're like, right after school, when you're 18, people are going to say, everyone is going to take a, I don't know, have an advantage if you don't do this. As in, maybe say, if you don't do college when you're 18, all your peers are going to have 1 year advantage over you. I don't believe in that. I really think you would get a lot more experience and a lot more perspectives from the world, which is going to help you to scale greater heights. So never compare yourself first. Okay, even if you don't, it's a great experiment for you to do it. It's a story that you can tell your grandkids if you ever have that thing to go with. Right. Number two, the way you're going to come back after the trip. I think Cinema Paradiso has that thing, right? The line where he says, once you kind of travel around the world, see other things, and you come back here, nothing might have changed, but you have changed, right? And I really think that is how it is. The world around you might still be the same. Your friends are going to be the same. Your parents are going to be the same, but you would have changed, and that's very important. Number two is, I think, just have a vague idea of what you want to do and just hit the road. Let it be motorcycle, let it be hitchhiking, let it be backpacking. It doesn't matter. The means doesn't matter, right? The tool is always the easier thing to figure. For me, I fell in love with motorcycle because I love travel, right? Maybe I would have fallen in love with cars. I would have done the same thing with that, in whatever way. So the tool doesn't matter. Just, I mean, don't think, just do it. That's number one. Number two is, don't over prepare, don't over plan the whole trip. Just take it as it comes and soak it in. And you don't have to have an end date also to it, right? Because again, for all you know, if you start creating content along the way, it might lead up a different journey altogether. It might open up a different world together. But never start the whole journey also with the fact saying that I want to make content, I want to hit 100,000 followers or 200,000 followers, because then you're traveling for the content, right? I always say the byproduct of travel should be content, and that's when you're going to enjoy the travel. If you start going on the journey with content first, the travel becomes a byproduct, then you're not going to have the fun of travel. So these would be my base. I mean, I'm very bad at giving advice to people because I have kind of never gotten much to begin with. But from my life lessons, this is what I would say. Just go. Then in the world that we live in right now, it's very, very interesting times to just put yourself out there and meet people. I mean, this conversation is happening because of travel, right? Like I kind of came to you in 2017 and told you about that, Macha, I want to do this Europe trip and let's kind of chat about it. It kind of opened up and we know each other for like 6-7 years now, right? And there are a lot of people like this who I've met because of travel, and that kind of shaped the whole journey a little more interesting.
Great. And also from a financial perspective, how do you monetize this, or how do you fund this, or how do you make this sustainable? That 1 year, do you think parents should support this, or you should do it on your own? Like some thoughts on that.
I mean, to each their own. If the parents are extremely supportive, then I think that's the easiest way for you to get there. Because, I mean, parents are also not going to give you the luxurious budget to begin with, right? They're not going to tell you go stay in 5-star hotels and shut yourself there. Have fun. That is wailing away time for me. You're still going to get money to go to a hostel. You're still going to take a bus or, take a bike and travel around. So that's going to be very limited budget, but it's going to open up a lot of things in that way. But if you want to sustain yourself, there are multiple ways, right? So one is you can volunteer in hostels, and basically you can trade your time for food and stay, which is basically there are three components in your travel. One is food, the other one is stay, the other one is transportation. If you can cover these three things, irrespective of you plan a 20-year road trip, irrespective of you planning a 1 month road trip. These are the three places that you're going to spend the majority of the money on, right? So I would say hostels is one thing, or like different places that you can kind of write to them and say that, hey, I want to work with you in terms of, like, say for example in Bir, if you want to be in a paragliding school, you can tell them that, listen, I can come and spend a month with you and help you with these things. In return, just give me a place to stay and food to eat, and maybe help me take the glides and let me learn how to paraglide, right? So things kind of like that help for sure. And the opportunities kind of come to you, right? When you're on the road, when you kind of see, especially in today's time, I'm seeing a lot of people hitchhiking around India. 10 years ago, that was not a thing at all, right? I mean, hitchhiking was kind of unheard of in India as a means of traveling to like a long distance travel sort of thing. But it's all progressed, it's all changed, and also you have a mobile phone, yeah. You have your laptop now, which is your powerful weapon. I mean, I really sound like a boomer uncle, because I remember in 2011 when I did Himalayas for the first time, I used to go to a PCO in Manali and call my then girlfriend, and we used to talk on the phone for hours, right? And but now it's not the case. You have access to everything, right? So I really think with the monetization that you can do with your phones, with your skills that you have, and your laptops these days, is way too much. So there is the means of earning money when you're traveling has become super easy. Like digital nomad is a legit thing now. I mean, countries give you visa easily for digital nomads rather than people who are going to say that I want to apply for a tourist visa, right? So I think progressively those things help for sure.
Okay, great. I know you touched upon this also, but when did you decide to end your break year and get back to full-time job? How did that decision happen, and how was the transition, more importantly?
Decision happened because of pandemic. That is not my personal choice. 2020 Jan, I came back to India for my best friend's wedding. I was in Ushuaia in Argentina. I had a choice between going to Antarctica on a cruise, or coming to India for the wedding. I had literally that much of money, and both the flights costed the same, and the Antarctica cruise costed the same. I came back, and because I thought my friend will get married only once, which is still
You
true. I
never
still
know.
hope. You never know, but yeah, no, they're happily in good marriage, so I'm good. I'm glad. But so I came back for the wedding, and I was supposed to start the trip, go to US, pick up a bike, ride up to Alaska, and then ride down to Central America. And April 4th was my ticket, and March 23rd was pandemic, as in like the lockdown started, right? So obviously at that time you couldn't travel. So I was in Bangalore. I was kind of like helping out, volunteering in all the places that I could and everything. Uh, there were pockets of things that were opening up. Like you could get the first sight of travel to go to Maldives or wherever. Or I think there are certain countries that opened up and stuff. But for me at that time, it felt a little insensitive when people were surviving for life, and I was sitting and traveling would not go down too well on myself. So I said, let's kind of take a pause, right? So till 2022, the pause was there. I never thought of traveling or anything. At 2022, the cliffhanger was this: do I want to again get back to the ride of the motorcycling, or do I kind of be in a city and kind of experience this? Because at some point, I also didn't want to miss out on the chance of working, right, in a city, having a rented apartment where I could stay, have the social circle, to know what this also feels like. Because right out of college, I did this, and I could spend the remaining 5 years there, then 2 years of pandemic. So I never got that social interaction of what a city life could be, right? The decision
Right.
was super easy, because if the first love was travel, the second love was movies, right? And I met a bunch of very interesting folks at Do Creative Labs who were supposed to edit my South America documentary. That's how I met them. But then we hit the synergies a little beyond that one particular piece of documentary, and we said, you know what? I think we should just join hands together and build some interesting content. So it's an ad film house. Started as an ad film house, but now we do long format content like web series and feature films and stuff, right? So it was great for me, because for me the creative process is also something that I really enjoy. I love kind of exploring more on what are the creative avenues to let this flow. And also another reason was, I think the whole influencer market kind of changed. In 2016, there was a lot of genuine, authentic voices that was there. But nowadays, it's about the trends and the reels and stuff, which I could never relate to. So I said, it's okay. Let me kind of do this for a little longer and see how this life goes for a while. So yeah.
Okay, super. Let's shift away from all of this Gyan now. We never got
Yeah.
to talk about your 5 year journey as such. So, your break year, I would want unfiltered, so called reels or live feed or post or whatever stories you can talk. I would want our listeners to, kind of live your 5 year break year experience. Spice it up as much as you
Oh
want,
my God.
and you can also talk about the Tinder dates and whatnot.
Oh, sure. I don't know how long we have for this because long, long story. But okay, let me start with India, right? Right. Okay, we'll take India, a little bit of Europe, and then do South America, and I'll touch upon like four interesting things.
Yeah.
So India, right? There were only two rules that I kind of kept to myself. Rule number one was never stay in a hotel or a hostel. Stay in people's house, because when you kind of go to a hotel, you shut yourself from the reality of what that city has to offer or that place has to offer. So I always stayed in random strangers' house. That basically meant either someone from social media reaching out to me and saying, I'm in this town, you can come and stay in my house. Or there are times I've knocked people door and said, I don't have a place to stay, can I stay in your house for a night? Everything has worked out. When I never had any of this, I used to stay in petrol pump, police station, bus stop, railway station. Right. Number two was do one new job in each state that I was in. Right. What this meant was, when I was a kid, I always wanted to be the guy who used to go put newspapers to different people's house, because at somewhere I read Warren Buffett did this when he was 13, and I also wanted to try it out to experience it. Right. Never got the chance to do it, because in my neighborhood people were like, no, Rohit cannot ride cycle and put newspaper and all. How is it possible and all of that? It was not the parents, but it's a neighborhood basically. So the 28 states which I was traveling to, I did one new job in each state. So I was basically someone who was selling sundal in one of the beaches. I was an ice cream seller one day, because as a kid I was always fascinated with how can an ice cream seller not eat all the ice creams? Because if I was a seller, I would have eaten all the ice creams, right? So I wanted to know how that feels. So I did that. I was a farmer. I was a truck cleaner. I used to work in a paroda shop in Kerala. So, and in a dhaba, I used to work for a bit. So all this kind of helped me to shape. It was good to experience all this. Yeah, there was no purpose for this. Did I make money out of this? Absolutely not. Right, but there was a new skill. I mean, if I have to put my resume down, I've never written a resume in my life. I hope I never do. But when I do, I think all these skills also kind of adds to it. Right, the 28 jobs would technically come in that resume sheet for sure. So that was India.
And
Europe was very.
how much your 8 months cost you?
8 months would have costed me around at that time a lakh, I think.
So
Yeah, I
inflation
mean
adjusted, maybe about 1.5 lakhs or 2 lakhs now. Okay, 8 months.
tops,
So
tops.
yeah,
I
that's
mean, I
like
would say
15. Yeah, that's like 10-12 thousand a month. Hmm.
yeah. Why I'm also saying that is because, as I said, I'm breaking it down to the three things, which is your travel. So for me, my bike drank fuel like there was no tomorrow, right? So it is a 500cc Royal Enfield. So it drank a lot of fuel. Number two was I never paid money for my stay, and my food is also free. So technically, if you see, my major spends is on this thing. I mean, obviously, I spent on foods whenever I used to travel with other people or like eat in dabas and stuff. I used to pay for it. So food and petrol were the pretty much, and maintenance of the bike were the pretty basic cost for 8 months. So I would say, yeah, a lakh and a half or two is a good number to keep right
For
now for a
eight
one
months.
year break here in India.
Okay. Now,
So after India,
yeah,
obviously,
yeah, yeah. Next
no, no,
is
go for it.
Europe. Yeah, you're flying to Europe now. Yeah.
Europe, yeah. So yeah, Europe was very interesting. Again, I picked up a bike and all of that, but I got one interesting brand deal, which was with Tinder, right? So the brand deal was very simple. We basically agreed upon saying, I was going to 28 countries in Europe for like 8-9 months at that time, and the deal was go on one date with one person from each of these countries, right? And write about two things. What do they think of what is dating according to them in their culture is? Number two, what do they think about dating a bearded Indian man? right?
Tell me
So
honestly, even if you didn't get that brand deal, you would have done that for free, no?
I would have definitely done it for free, and I really think I should have still done it for free because dating as a profession is a very bad idea, right? Because it is, you have to write a report after that. I don't want to do, right? So when this deal happened, and I did Spain and I did France and I think I did Portugal, and I said I can't do this. So I called Tinder and I said, Machan, listen, I don't think we can do this because it's getting too taxing. Because when you make this as a profession, it becomes very, very hectic. And you have to like plan this out and all of this. So I said, I'm not doing this. Cut to me in Croatia. I was riding from Hungary. I rode to Croatia. Bike ran out of fuel. Okay, park the bike on the side. In those countries, as you know, you can't push your bike to the petrol station. You have to call the tow service. They'll come and tow your bike, put it in the petrol station, then you can refill your thing. So I called the tow service and they said, we are super busy today. You stand there only for the next 2 hours, we'll come. Okay, so I'm like, cool. So I was waiting, didn't know what to do. Started swiping on Tinder, found this girl, and she texted me saying, "What's up?" Said nothing, stuck in middle of the road, and she's like, "Where?" I sent the location, and she said, "Oh, that's like 2 kilometers from my place. Let me come." And she came with a gallon of fuel and a sandwich. So we had this
Basically, Tinder
little.
or Dunzo, what was it?
Yeah, it was Tinder at that time. Dunzo was not existent. But also we went on a date after that, right? So I think it added up as a combo package. But I think, yeah, we went to one of the fuel stations, sat there, and the next day I took her out for a dinner. So when I told this, I mean, I just wrote to Tinder saying that, hey, this was very cool, man. Thanks a lot for the app at that time. And they said, hey, can we just publish this article? So that went viral. It went viral to the point where French national television did a story on me for Valentine's Day on different ways of finding love, right? So, and this was seen by my mom's friend who was in France, who's in nurse, and this was in the TV. And she sent this to my mom, and my mom is like, "I told you to leave this country for this only. You bring some trouble or the other every day. Now you're doing this in France also, and people are calling me and belting me for this." No, but also all in good humor. So
Yeah.
I think that was Europe. Yeah. South America is a beast. I mean, so now that we have flown to South America, let me highlight a couple of things. Okay, one is I had dinner with Pablo Escobar's brother.
What are you
So
saying?
yeah. So, I mean, it's one of those things where we basically were doing a documentary, and the documentary also started because we never knew anything, right? So, me and this friend of mine, Sukesh, did the trip for 6 months together. Then I traveled a year and a half by myself. So, when we both were there, we just said, Sukesh is a DOP, and he's also a scuba diving instructor. He's also a paddy surfer instructor. He does underwater filming and all of this. He's now shooting in Bombay for some big directors and all of that. So when Sukesh came on this trip, we both did this trip. We said, I mean, my theory to him was very simple. There are so many people in South America, macha, and everyone will have one story. Okay, all we need to find is four people who have stories that we can put it together, right? But I obviously missed out the most important point that you need to know Spanish when you're in South America, and I didn't know any Spanish. So we went there. We met this one girl, Juliana, who was taking a tour, walking tour, who spoke English and Spanish. We took her out for dinner and we asked, "What's your story?" Her story was very simple. She said, when I was a kid, we used to play a game on the way to school. And the game was who saw the least amount of dead bodies on the way to school. And I'm like, wait, what? And she's like, yeah, this was peak of Pablo Escobar era, and a lot of people were getting killed. And every person that is in Colombia right now has been directly or indirectly affected because of Escobar, right? Now, and then she said, then a Netflix show came which glorified this guy as a great leader, or who's caring for his family and stuff. And people just came here with T-shirts saying "Viva Escobar" and all of this, right? So for me, it kind of took a while because I also seen Narcos, and I've kind of seen that in whatever lens that I saw it at that time, and as a neutral viewer. But then when this happened, I said, wait, I think we should just get into the tea of this and kind of understand what the locals' perspective is about Escobar, and also what's the general mass, the traveler's perspective or tourist perspective is. So embarked on this journey of documenting a lot of people about what do they think about Escobar and everything. And that led me to Escobar's brother. I obviously cannot tell what he told me on this whole thing of which side he stands for sure, but it is a very fun time. I mean, we went and had dinner off camera. Then he spoke a little bit in front of camera, but it was good fun. So that was one. Another, I think this should be the final cliffhanger story. I don't know. I mean, you can cut it out if it is not suitable for the audience mostly. But I was riding in Argentina. This is Bolivia-Argentina border, and I was riding to Argentina with a German friend of mine. He had just started traveling. He had no clue about world travel or South America on a motorcycle and everything. So I said, "Can I just shadow you for like few days?" I said, "Yeah, man, sure, let's do it." So we both were riding, and I never used maps, right? So even when me and Sukesh used to go, we used to toss coin. If it's heads, we used to go east. If it's tails, we used to go west. That's how we used to pick directions and head towards somewhere. So we kept going, and we stopped in front of a village to find where is our campsite on iOverlander, and we were just looking through the phone and checking our notifications. A small kid, okay, who's like 13 years old, came in front of us, like 200 meters in front of us, pulled a gun from his pocket and said, "Give me all your money." And I told this guy that, dude, listen, you don't know Spanish, number one. Number two is you have not been in the situations, because I've been in gun situations in Indonesia, in Italy, and I think one more place I forgot. But Indonesia and Italy I remember very well. I've been in gun situations before, so I told him I can handle this. So chill. So I told him just sit on the bike. So I got off the bike. I told this guy I could speak Spanish by then, because year and a half in South America, you are inevitably your Duolingo cannot help you, but throw yourself in South America and you'll learn Spanish for sure, right? So I was talking to this kid and negotiating, saying that, hey, listen, I can put the money on the floor, but if it flies away, you can't blame me. All of this, and I'm just walking towards him. The kid lost his cool, and he just yelled at me, saying that, can you just shut up and throw the money or keep the money on the floor or whatever. This German guy got scared and he got off the bike, and he's 6'4". The kid got scared the German guy is going to come and attack him with me. Kid just pulled the trigger and the bullet just missed me by like a few meters. So yeah, so there was like, I almost missed a gunshot. And as much as people say your whole life flashes in front of your eyes when it's coming towards you, nothing happened. I'm like, I couldn't speak. I couldn't speak for the next 10 days. So my first Vipassana was, again, I didn't plan for it, but life threw me into it. And I basically went to a mountain in Patagonia, in one of the mountains, not the Torres del Paine worlds, much more earlier. So I basically spent 10 days just making coffee in the morning, going walking around, coming back, just sitting with my thought. Couldn't write, couldn't do anything, couldn't listen to music, couldn't do anything. After 10 days, I called my mom and I started crying, and she's like, "It's okay, we'll figure." So that was that. And also, so yeah, that was one very interesting story. I think another thing that I could touch upon is ayahuasca in South America was again life changing. That can be a separate podcast altogether. But yeah, I did it 7 times, and I think that kind of was life altering in a lot of ways to get perspectives.
So, what are next life plans, and how does travel feature in that? Will you consider going back to traveling again, and will it be solo, or you'll have a potential partner?
A few future partner and all is a distant dream, but the solo thing is very different. Yeah, I think riding a motorcycle by yourself is very different from having a pillion, or also riding with a riding partner is very different. It's definitely, travel is there in the pipeline. I think 2025 is when the next ride that I want to go. And I also have this habit of not taking this short 2 day breaks or 3 day breaks or a month break and everything. If we do it, nadicha hero. And the madri, if we do it, yeah, he hit it out of the park. This America Mapla and all doesn't suit for us. So I basically am planning a 108 country road trip for 5 years. This is a proper round the world trip covering all the continents. Again, motorcycling, starting from Alaska all the way around the world is the plan.
As a slow travel proponent myself, and a digital nomad now, I'm able to relate to a lot of things you spoke about, and wishing you all the best for the future plans. I hope to kind of ride with you at, if not 108, well, probably 1 or 2 countries.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, we should definitely plan it up. Thank you so much for having me, man. I mean, it's absolute pleasure. It's been a while since I spoke about travel and all of this to anybody in this length. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity, and I'm really looking forward to coming back with more stories to you.
This wraps up this episode of the Bucketlist Project podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode and listening to Rohit's very colorful experience and his perspectives on brachial. Uh, are you considering a brachial yourself, or you want to give it a shot? Maybe listen to this podcast would definitely help you find some answers, if not all. And yeah, we hope to bring more such interesting topics for you in the coming days. So if you liked what you listened to, then please do subscribe to our podcast, which is available both in Spotify and Apple. See you next week, and until then, have a great time.